What we're looking at here is Ukraine's Aeroscout unit, showing off the grenade-dropping drones they use to attack Russian troops in Donetsk Oblast. These aircraft are often heralded as the future of warfare, and watching videos of them blowing up troops, tanks and armoured vehicles with ease, it isn't hard to see why. But the reality on the ground is far more complicated than the social media posts imply. We're going to break down how these drones work, examine this tape, and speak to the man who helped record it to find out what's really going on. There's no single model for a grenade-dropping drone, but broadly speaking, they break down into two categories. There are small drones that carry a single grenade, and heavy drones that carry much larger or multiple warheads. Let's start by looking at the smaller ones. These tend to be quadcopters, like the Chinese-made Mavic. They have 4 fold-out arms with a propeller at the end of each, hence the name, which makes them very agile and fast, with top speeds of 40 miles an hour. There's the main body, which contains the battery pack, allowing them to fly up to 15 miles, but a second battery is sometimes added on top to increase their range to 30 miles. They cost about $2,000 and are readily available online, making them cheap compared to other long-range weapons and easy to get hold of. These drones are fitted with a carrying cradle underneath, which the Ukrainians make themselves. This holds the bombs they will drop on the Russian. These bombs tend to be grenades which have been specially adapted with 3D printed parts like tail fins and nose fuses so they fall straight downwards. Because the grenades are small, their main targets are Russian troops. But if the pilot gets lucky, then they can burn an armoured vehicle or a tank by dropping them through an open roof hatch and setting light to the fuel or ammo inside. If we look at the tape, we can see what that looks like in reality. Here's the Aeroscouts inside a cottage they've repurposed as a headquarters on the southern Donetsk front, near the town of Marianka, before it was captured by Russia. They're showing off a Chinese-made Mavic 3, a commercial drone, usually used for filming things like weddings, which they've repurposed for these missions. Here's the 3D printed carrying cradle they attach to the underside to carry the bombs, and here is one of the bombs, a grenade typically used in a rifle-mounted launcher that they've adapted with a 3D printed tail fin. This is a Mark I American hand grenade that has also been adapted with an X-shaped piece of plastic, which replaces the pin. It snaps when it hits the ground and activates the grenade. This is how it fits into the carrying cradle, and how the cradle drops it. And this is another rifle grenade, fitted into a slightly different housing, also 3D printed. Here we can see the Aeroscouts setting up for a mission, but we're going to pause right there and take a look at how these drones are used first. The Aeroscouts are a dedicated drone unit. This means they're not deployed on the front line, but a few miles behind it. When a Ukrainian unit on the front line comes under attack, they'll request fire support. This usually involves artillery, but also grenade-dropping drones. The Aeroscouts get a call to help and head to a particular sector with their drones. They'll drive to a forward position, a pre-prepared trench or dugout, where they'll set up their drone and get it into the air. Then, using live video feeds from surveillance drones hovering over the battlefield and electronic maps, they'll start hunting down and taking out their targets. Because the bombs they're dropping are small, they're mostly used against infantry. The grenades will cause casualties, but the presence of drones is also helpful in forcing Russian formations to disperse. This makes attacking much harder, because a successful assault is all about concentrating power in one place. With drones in the air, this becomes very dangerous to do. If the drone pilot gets lucky, they may find an abandoned vehicle on the battlefield, with its top hatches left open. In the hands of a skilled pilot, a grenade dropped through the hatch could set light to the fuel or ammo inside a tank or armoured vehicle and destroy it completely. Once the mission is complete, the drone returns to its handler where it can be fitted with another explosive and head out into the field again. If we come back to the tape and hit play, we can see that in action. Here, the Aeroscouts are setting up their drone, flipping out the arms and the propellers. This soldier is fitting a grenade into the carrying cradle, and if you look here, you can see a trigger he's going to fit to the nose, which will set it off when it hits the ground. The Mavic is small enough to be launched by hand, which is what's happening here. And here's a clearer look at one of those nose-mounted triggers being fitted. This grenade comes with a special message for the enemy.
Our present for Russian.
Now, let's take a look at the larger drones. This is a Vampire, a purpose-built Ukrainian drone which is many times the size of the Mavic we just saw. It's a hexacopter because it has 6 arms and propellers instead of 4. In the middle are antennas. We're not 100% sure, but we think this one boosts the signal of other nearby drones, and this one controls the Vampire itself. On the legs are 2 large battery packs. This makes it slower and less agile than the Mavic, but means it can carry a much heavier payload, up to 33 pounds, and transport it up to 14 miles. It is also fitted with a thermal camera because the Vampire carries out most of its missions in the dead of night. That's because the 6 rotors make it very loud, so it's easy to spot and shoot down during the day. All this extra equipment costs more, upwards of $80,000, so it is not as expendable as the smaller drones. But it can attack a wider variety of targets. It is powerful enough to carry and drop repurposed mortar shells, even anti-tank mines. That's useful, not just against troops, but against hardened targets like bunkers, trenches, and tanks. The Russians fear this drone so much, they've nicknamed it Baba Yaga, a witch in Slavic folklore who flies about in the night, carrying off and eating children. Here's another clip of the Aeros scouts setting up a Vampire to use on a combat mission. You can see just how much larger it is than a Mavic. There's no question of this thing being launched by hand. Down here you can see hardpoints where 4 bombs can be attached, and here is the devastation caused during a raid by one of these drones. It's easy to see why the Russians find them so terrifying. What I've got here is a tape of attacks by the smaller drones, so you can see the difference between the two. Here you can see a drone hovering over Russian positions on the front line. You can see the grenade the drone is going to drop creeping into the frame here. Once the pilot has picked their target, they let the bomb go, and you can see it exploding here. Obviously, that's nowhere near the size of the explosion caused by the Vampire. And here, you can see what happens if the pilot manages to get a grenade through the open hatch of a tank. The initial explosion is small, but pretty soon the tank has set ablaze, which will put it out of action as if it had been hit by an anti-tank rocket for a fraction of the cost. Drones in war are nothing new. They were a constant and controversial part of America's wars in the Middle East going back 2 decades. Back then, the trend was for big and expensive drones because Al-Qaeda and ISIS didn't have any jets or air defenses to shoot them down with. Ukraine has reversed that trend. Now, drones are cheap and expendable. They have to be, because the skies over Ukraine are so contested that anything big would be shot down almost immediately. These smaller drones do still get shot down all the time. Their average number of flights is about 4, but they are easily replaceable. Because they're cheap and easy to get, they're everywhere on the battlefield. Up to 10,000 of them are in the air at any one time. It's hardly surprising, therefore, there are millions of videos of them on apps like Telegram and Twitter. Watching all this footage, it's easy to get the impression that drones are unstoppable killers, hunting down troops and tanks unimpeded. But that's a false impression. For obvious reasons, the Ukrainians don't show off their failures, only their successes. And the most common outcome of a drone mission is failure. For every 1 hit, 8 or 9 drones may have fallen short, running out of battery en route, brought down by gunfire, or forced off target by jammers. Even when the drones do reach their objectives, there is no guarantee they'll actually hit them, especially if the pilot is a rookie. Dropping a grenade precisely on a moving target from hundreds of feet in the air is no mean feat, especially in high winds or bad weather. For that reason, even the Ukrainians, pioneers of this new way of warfare, don't rely on drones alone to get the job done. Artillery is still thought to kill more soldiers on both sides than these new weapons, and Kyiv is constantly asking its allies in the West for more anti-tank rockets. That has raised questions about whether these really are the game changers they appear to be. We sat down with the journalist who filmed this footage and who himself has survived drone attacks in Ukraine.
I'm Richard Pendlebury. I'm a frontline correspondent in Ukraine for the Mail. We've seen how the war has developed and how the machinery of war has developed, which has been incredibly quickly. The most significant is the development of drone warfare.
Richard knows what it's like to be hunted by a Russian drone.
It's a very unpleasant sensation to know that, or to hear the drone, first off. I mean, it's a very particular sound, sounds like a strimmer, buzz or like a very large mosquito. The first time it happened to us where we were directly engaged in a situation with a Russian drone was in a trench line right at the front near the Le Mans front last summer at night. So we just entered on foot the trench line when the Russian drone came right overhead. We could hear it overhead very clearly, our position in the trench. We were told by the soldiers with stop, don't move, don't say anything if that matters, I don't know. There was like a minute which seemed much longer while the drone was right over us, stationary hovering. Now it probably had thermal imaging because it wouldn't otherwise be out at night, but it probably didn't, it wasn't armed, thank goodness. Or at least it didn't see us, didn't react to us, it didn't drop any munitions on us, and then eventually it moved off further down the line. More recently, in the last few weeks, we were driving into a little village town called New York. It was a beautiful summer's morning, about 6:15 in the morning, which is very bad conditions if you're trying to avoid drones because they can see you from a long way, and if you're the only cars on the road, it was a 2-vehicle convoy of a reconnaissance patrol. We were carrying, on this occasion, a drone detector, which picks up the signals from Russian drones and tells you how far they are from you, what kind of drone they are. It started to beep, and then Russian drone, reconnaissance drone, passed directly over our vehicle. It was a target acquisition drone, so it was looking at us rather than wanting to, being able to kill us. When we pulled out of the town, the same road on the way back, again, beeps, 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 and this was a kamikaze drone which was closing in on us, and it almost got to the point where we drove off into the nearest hedge and then scattered, which is what the instructions were, when it stopped closing and then went off somewhere else, which was lucky for us. But it was a very horrible experience.
If you're chased by a drone, how do you defend yourself?
In places like Chazov Yar, most of your time is spent underground. You just can't wander around because you'll be seen. And then the drone either will be a kamikaze drone, will attack, or it will call in artillery onto your position. You have to be so careful. Vehicles have to be parked in hedges, under trees. You can't afford to leave them anywhere than undercover. It's suicidal to do it. I know people who've parked on the curb and the vehicle gets hit. Some of it is down to the experience of the pilot, the drone pilot, is if he does spot you, whether he will get you. I have a friend who's in the Ukrainian army whose vehicle was hit by 2 kamikaze drones, one after the other. They hit the back of his vehicle and they destroyed the back of the vehicle, but they didn't kill him or the guy who was inside the vehicle with him, to the degree that they were able eventually to drive the vehicle away. But he said if it had been an experienced kamikaze drone pilot, he would have overtaken the vehicle, swung around and then flown through the windscreen, and that would have been it.
Richard has seen this war evolve firsthand. How are drones now different from the first day?
The start of the war, which was, the most important bit was when the Russians got to the suburbs of Kyiv. The focus on drones, you were aware that drones were taking part in the war, but you heard about the Bayraktar, the huge Turkish drones which were attacking the Russian armoured columns. The Russians were very close to central Kyiv, and we were very close to the front line. But there was never, maybe naively, there was never a feeling that you were under threat by Russian drones. It was always artillery or heavy mortar fire. Once you get to Irpin and Bucha, places like that, which were on the sort of by the front line, it wasn't, is there a drone in the air? That kind of changed possibly later in 2022, but certainly by last summer. It is the dominant thing on the battlefield now. The psychological effect, I know this from personal experience and just being with the soldiers, everything is calculated around the threat of Russian drones. It's like how you behave, how you move, how you live. I was in Chazov Yar last month where there's very heavy fighting. And one of the units, infantry units, fire support units, which is using drones, said there is very little infantry man-to-man combat now. It's largely being conducted by drones and artillery. So much ordnance is needed, and the Ukrainians are losing this game. Is that the unit I visited? They had a little caravan, and they were making drone bombs using 3D printers and just lathes. And it was all. I said they were like, and they said whenever somebody has a spare 15 minutes, they come in here and make another bomb. The drones are the dominant force in the battlefield. There's no doubt about that.
But the drones aren't foolproof.
I was in a bunker with an artillery unit last month, and the Russians, this is when they said the sky is dirty, which is a euphemism. The Russians are overhead. There was but then the Russians started attacking the positions, the artillery positions, and they were using this dedicated attack drone, Privet 82. And the Ukrainians had actually hacked into the video feed. So we were actually watching what the Russians could see as they were attacking our positions on the screen in the bunker. The drone kept going round, and the positions were in a tree line, and it kept going round, and then it would. The operator obviously thought he wasn't going to get there, and I think it was a bit windy. And the Ukrainians with me would be laughing at him because he was incompetent. And then finally, because the battery time, again, they have to attack at a certain stage. So he attacks and he lands in the field in front of the tree line, and that's a game over. But then they launch another 15, one after the other, all against the same target, and each of them misses in the same way. You don't see those on the social media.
Richard captured the Aero scout footage during one of his trips. Let's see his reaction.
Well, this is a unit of Aero scouts for the Ukrainian border guards, and they're in an abandoned cottage on the southern Donetsk front. As you can see, they're showing us some of the adaptations that they've made to commercially available drones, most common being the Mavic from DJI. They were then last summer, they still are having to adapt these reconnaissance drones into bomb-carrying strike drones. They've got a cradle there, and the corporal is demonstrating how the cradle works. It's very simple. It drops a grenade. You possibly will see the table. It's covered in bits and pieces. It's like, it's a workshop. This is a Mavic type. It may well be Mavic type drone, which again they've adapted to drop a grenade. They've also used what they call it aftermarket. With that particular Mavic, I think they've added a second battery, because one of the big problems of these small Mavics is their short range. And unless you see your target quite quickly, then they're liable to run out in maybe 15 minutes. And what they don't really want is to have them come back with the bomb, the grenade still on. I mean, these are not kamikaze drones. They are returnable, but it's always best to drop your ordnance. This is a purpose-built attack drone. It's Ukrainian manufactured. You can see the effect it has. It's a vampire drone. They usually use them at night, and they can carry they can carry an anti-tank mine adapted to explode on contact when dropped from the air. The Russians are very frightened. You can see the devastation.
How close were these troops to the front line?
It was probably about 5 miles. Some of the drone operators will be further forward. We went to their forward positions. This is more like it's a unit, sort of company headquarters, but it's also their workshop. It's also where they monitor the reconnaissance drones. They have laptops, iPads, and for instance, when we were there, we were watching artillery Ukrainian artillery fall into Marianka. So you have an iPad, they're saying the shell is in the air, we're waiting, and then you see the puff of smoke. And that's being conducted from that position. They have a position further forward where they're dug in, their operators, their pilots are dug in, and are launching some of the shorter range drones over the Russian line.
I also wanted to know how a mission unfolds.
There might be infantry assault on a Ukrainian position in the front line. The infantry, the Ukrainian defenders, will call in fire support. That will be artillery, but also the drones. The drone unit will get the call to go to a certain sector with their attack drones, probably launched from the forward positions for that unit. They will go and assist in trying to stop the attack. And a lot of the time, because the Ukrainians have been very short of artillery shells, drones have been used to break up infantry assaults. So when they've been short of longer range artillery, howitzer shells, long range drones with munitions have flown up to 30 kilometers behind the Russian lines to attack. They're very flexible, and their capabilities are getting better or more frightening, depending on which end of the attack you're on. If you got very lucky and you dropped a hand grenade which fell down an open hatch into an armoured vehicle, it would yes, it would possibly, it would stop it, it would disable it. The drones that we were looking at are generally against infantry, soft targets. But what you've got to appreciate is how many drones there are in the air at one time. I mean, the figure I was given last summer was 10,000 in the air at any one time along the front lines. So if you go into a forward command post, and you can't go out because there's artillery coming on time, but in the forward command post there will be a bank on the wall, 12 different images constantly flickering, and that is from 12 different drones who are over the sector the whole time, reconnaissance drones. It's like a security room in a department store or something like that. You're just looking at what's in front of you and looking for movement all the time. The reconnaissance drones will work with the kamikaze drones, and the kamikaze drones are by far the most frightening, and they have changed the war.
Now the big question, are these drones really a game changer?
Nobody can afford to ignore the lessons learned on the battlefield with drone warfare. They've totally transformed warfare now from here on in. And we're talking about non-state groups like the Houthis or Hamas, which they're already deploying attack drones, up to the superpowers like in the West, the United States, and to a lesser extent Britain. And they've got to really ramp up their use of drones, not just to use as offensive weapons, but the way that they're going to tackle them, electronic warfare, but also air defense against drones. Because at the moment we have this unsustainable situation where they're using missiles which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a piece to take down a Mavic drone which may cost $2,000.
That's where this tape stops, but we'll be back soon to play you through another episode of War on Tape. What we're looking at here is the Astra group, a drone unit embedded within Ukraine's special forces who are fighting Russia to the north of Kharkiv. They're using some of the latest battlefield tech, FPV or first-person view drones, to blow up Russian vehicles and trenches. These tiny, cheap kamikaze aircraft have been around for years, filming weddings and racing each other. But now some believe they're revolutionizing modern warfare. But are they really the next big thing? Or are they just filling a gap in Ukraine's arsenal? We're going to delve into how an FPV works, analyze this tape, and speak to an expert to find out. There's no single model of an FPV. They're built by dozens of companies, hobbyists, and even by troops on the front line. So they're all a little bit different, but they tend to follow the same design, which starts with an X-shaped frame. This is typically made from carbon fiber or plastic, which is either repurposed from an existing drone, like a racing drone, or created using a 3D printer. At the end of each arm is a small electric motor and a propeller that the drone uses to accelerate and steer. There are 4 in total, making this drone a quadcopter. Having 4 motors means the drones are fast. 60 miles an hour top speed is nothing unusual, but some can reach 100 miles an hour or more, and they can make very sharp turns. Strapped to the underneath of the drone, using cable ties or something similar, is the payload. For FPVs, this is usually an anti-tank shell. Here we're using the warhead from an RPG-7 rocket launcher that probably weighs somewhere between 2 and 4.5 pounds. On top, there's a battery, which gives the drone a range of around 6 miles. And on the front is a small camera, which acts as the drone's eyes, and at the back is a transmitter antenna. You can actually see all of that if we go back to the tape and freeze frame right here. Here's the X-shaped frame, the 4 propellers, the battery, and the antenna. And underneath is the payload, which in this case seems to be an explosive the FPV team has improvised themselves. Once the drone is in the air, the antenna sends a drone's eye view back to the pilot, who uses a headset to control it as if they were on board. This allows the pilots to make incredibly precise adjustments, striking Russian tanks, armoured vehicles, and trenches at their weakest points. This is the true genius of the FPV, turning outdated grenades and anti-tank shells into lethal precision weapons. You can see the pilots wearing their headsets in the footage here and here. And here we can see what they're seeing through the drone's camera. This allows them to hit specific weak points on Russian vehicles, blowing them to smithereens. To be effective, the FPV needs to work alongside a surveillance drone, which looks similar but has a better camera. Flying high above the battlefield, their mission is to pinpoint Russian vehicles, troops, or trenches to be attacked. If their commanders decide a target, say a Russian tank, is worth hitting, they will issue orders to a unit to strike it. In the past, that unit might have used expensive anti-tank missiles or artillery shells, but increasingly, the job is being given to cheap FPVs. FPV teams typically deploy between 1 and 3 miles behind the front line, out of immediate danger, but close enough to keep the target within range. They will set up an aerial, which allows them to steer the drone and receive video back from it. Then they will launch. It takes 2 people to navigate, the pilot and a spotter, who reads the location of the target from a tablet computer. Once the tank is in sight, the pilot steers the drone into it, aiming for a weak spot like the tracks, the engine, or the ammo. As the drone hits the target, its payload detonates, destroying the drone itself and hopefully the tank along with it. Now, let's watch all of that in action. Here you can see the Astra team deploying into the field after receiving their orders, riding along in the back of a pickup truck with all their equipment. Once they reach the area they're attacking, they set up their aerial, assemble the drone and its explosive payload, and get it into the air. The pilots then pull on their goggles and get to work. Looking at this slightly blurry name patch, we think this guy's name is Zachik, which means bunny in Ukrainian, which would make sense of all the other rabbit patches he's wearing, and this rather fetching pair of camo bunny ears. Here you can see his spotter using a tablet computer to guide him. Once Zachik can see the target himself, he dive bombs the drone straight into it. The surveillance drone spots an explosion, and the attack is a success. Cue the celebrations before the team packs up and heads back to base. All of which is very impressive, but are FPV drones really a revolution in modern warfare? And can they be compared to the invention of gunpowder or the nuclear bomb? Let's take a step back from battlefield tactics and talk strategy. Ukraine is locked into a war of attrition with Russia. The winner will be whichever side can exhaust the enemy's resources fastest. Russia has a huge natural advantage. It has more of everything: troops, tanks, planes, ships, you name it. And it can easily get more of whatever it needs because it is a massive country with lots of natural resources. That means Putin can afford to take losses and still win. Ukraine doesn't have that luxury. It needs to maximize Russian losses whilst minimizing its own. In other words, Ukraine needs to be efficient. And there are few weapons on the battlefield today more efficient than FPV drones. Before FPVs, taking out troops, tanks and aircraft was mainly the job of artillery and missiles. We saw this at the beginning of the war, when shelling demolished Russian columns on their way into Kiev, while missiles blasted tanks and shot helicopters out of the sky. But artillery isn't all that accurate. A standard 155mm NATO shell has what's called a circular area probable of 650 feet. That means a little over half the time the shell lands 325 feet either side of the thing it was fired at. The rest of the time, it lands outside of this circle. So in order to hit anything with artillery, you can't fire just one shell. You need at least dozens, possibly hundreds, to blanket an area to guarantee a kill. Artillery therefore chews through ammo, and even though shells are relatively cheap and easy to make, Ukraine is constantly running out. Missiles are much more accurate. Using sensors and motors to guide themselves to their targets, you can be fairly sure of a hit even when firing just 1 or 2. But they're very expensive and difficult to manufacture. A single US Javelin costs around $200,000, and even America, with its vast military-industrial complex, only makes just over 2,000 of them per year. FPVs solve the shortcomings of both. They're cheap and easy to make. Almost anyone can knock one up in a shed using a few $100s of components that are readily available online. In fact, a lot of Ukrainians do this, raising funds for them through online donations before sending the homemade weapons to the front. They're also pinpoint accurate, able to fly through tank hatches or strike precise weak points in the armor, often with spectacular results. They're also very hard to stop. Lots of high-tech anti-air defenses could take them down, but the drones are so easy to make there's no point. Eventually, those air defenses will run out of ammo, and then the drones can fly straight through. That means almost everything on the battlefield is vulnerable to them. Ukraine has used them to hit troops, tanks, trenches, artillery guns, even other drones and helicopters. That's why some people think they're revolutionary. They make precision weapons that used to be available to a select few available to almost anyone. We've seen similar technology used successfully in Gaza by Hamas against the IDF, and in the Red Sea by the Houthis against an array of Western navies. But FPVs are not perfect. They struggle to deploy in bad weather, and because they rely on the pilot's vision for targeting, they are vulnerable to things like smoke, fog, and decoys. They are extremely vulnerable to being shot down because they have no protection beyond their speed. One of the weakest points of FPV drones is they rely on a signal to steer. These signals can be blocked by electronic jammers, which cause them to fall from the sky or veer off target. AI might help solve that issue. Ukraine is now experimenting with drones that can select their own targets, meaning they don't need a pilot. No pilot means nobody to communicate with, hence no signal and nothing to jam. There's no doubt these drones have proved a game changer in Ukraine. Their strengths, cheap and deadly, play perfectly into the brutal game of numbers the two sides are playing. In the wide open plains of eastern Ukraine, where tanks are very obvious and obstacles are few, the drones can easily find their way to their targets. But in dense environments that are very difficult to navigate, could a skilled pilot even make it through? And even if they did, they would only be aiming at infantry, which is a far less valuable target.
We wanted to know more, so we spoke to a man who is producing drones for the Ukrainian army. This is Volodymyr Ladygin of the Direct Inclusion Foundation. First, I asked him what life has been like since Putin's first invasion in 2014.
I hardly remember the time for the war, because the war had started 10 years ago. I was born in Donbas. It's my native city. I lived there for more than 30 years. And when the war had started, I had to move from there because I don't want to support this revolution, like they call, like this Russian war, this invasion. I don't want to be a part of it, so I had to move. A lot of people that I knew, that were my relatives, have stayed, and now they're working with this administration because you have no choice. You must work with them, or you will be killed. You will be taken into basement and like tortured to death. So I've stopped the whole part of my life. I've stopped communicating with a lot of people, unfortunately. So that was like the breaking point. And for this, all for this, like 8 years till the full-scale invasion at Russia, I knew that it would happen because it is the essence of Russia to make like these sudden attacks to capture territory, to capture people, to use people. So literally they want to use population of Ukraine as a reserve for mobilization and for moving to Poland, to Moldova and to Kaliningrad, because their plan is to reunite all the territory that was like under USSR occupation. So let's call it like this. Occupation countries that were occupied by USSR. All this period, like for 8 years, I was preparing a team, I was preparing myself. So now we are living not like usually persons. I have a special panic bag, so with my documents, with some food, with some money, with some medicines, and it is part of life. Even my children know that there is like a panic bag, we need to grab some water, food, and like in a few minutes we have to go. I always keep like a tank of my car full with gasoline. It's like life made me like this.
Then came Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022.
We were ready, we were active, and we started to do so. By the first, we have created our foundation, and we started to help both civilians who suffered from this war and to the military, of course, because a lot of my friends in the first day they just took these weapons, these Kalashnikovs, 4 magazines of bullets, and they jumped on the military like vehicles and went to war. I wanted to help them because they had no helmets, they had no armor plates, they had nothing. So, and we started to gather everything that we couldn't get because it was a lack of everything. You know, it was literally like disaster for our country. We started that we have enough helmets, We have enough armor plates, but we need weaponry. And in the situation with a great lack of artillery shells, Ukrainian army made a desperate attempt to use FPV technology, FPV drones, instead of artillery, just replaced it somehow. And in this situation, this usage of FPV technology was so successful that now we have, I don't know, like how many new devices using this technology.
So Volodymyr started helping the military get hold of drones.
We buy just ready product. For example, we buy a lot of Mavics. It's like DJI, Mavic 3T, especially drones with thermal vision camera. Also, we're producing from the simplest 7-inch drones. So we just literally print the frame at the ordinary 3D printer and put some modules that we buy in China. China is the best supplier for us, unfortunately. It was like very funny situation when we tried to buy these modules for the first time, these engines, some processors. Chinese sellers, they thought we were Russians, so they started to tell us how to avoid sanctions. It was very funny. We told guys, we don't need it, we just need this weapon. We have understood that they like selling these drones both to us and for Russians. They're just trading to both sides, you know. It was crazy. So our production is not very big. Our foundation is, we are acting independently. We have our own budget. We product, I don't know, maybe 100 drones per year. But if we are talking about the very initiative that we have in Ukraine, we have, for example, Rosaries. This is the most successful project, and they have produced more than 100,000 FPVs. These FPVs were given to the army. It's a really great amount, and all of these were made by volunteering movement. It's not like state sponsorship. It's one of the ways how we Ukrainians see this war to be so unjust towards us. So we literally convert all our hatred into FPVs.
I wanted to know more about the FPVs that Volodymyr produces for the army.
FPV is a technology that allows operator using special glasses, using tablet or using phone and a camera on the very drone to operate drone and hit the target, for example, or to throw an object, grenade or something, or thermite at the positions of the military. So this technology allows now to use this drone even in the drone wars, when we have intelligent drones of Russia and we're using Ukrainian drone to hunt it down. So this technology is very flexible. It allows the person from the safe place to hit the enemy. And this technology reduces the losses of Ukrainian troops, obviously. So what we're doing, we're using in any possible way. Military tells us that we need drones to hit targets, just one-time drones. We make cheapest drones that we can make, like some set of modules. So we are printing this frame, we are putting some models depending on the situation. Then we need to put special program equipment. So we have very good IT specialists that helped us. We're not innovative in this, we just took this all this program equipment that we needed from our friends. Then we need to calibrate it, and this drone is ready to use. We just need to send it to the military. They put these explosives, and that's it, the drone works. So we just need to put several engines, we need to put battery, we need to put this motherboard, so-called, we need to put antenna, we need to put camera, and that's it, the drone is ready. It's not a very big deal. Everybody can do it, even at home. It's not a very complicated technology. The cheapest we can produce, it costs about 300 pounds, 400 pounds, depending on the situation. And this drone have all the possibility to destroy a military tank, for example, that costs millions. It's amazing. It all depends on the mastership of an operator. So we need, together with drone, we must always put a good well-trained operator. And we have, in Ukraine, we have a special academy. We don't involve in this. We only produce drones and buy drones and supplying drones to the military, but we have special center who trains these operators. Because it depends on this, because we can have the best drones, and if operators will not be able to fully operate these drones, it will be useless.
Next, I wanted to know why Ukraine has become a war of drones.
Everything has started from the lack of artillery shells. So literally, Ukraine for defense need to counter like enemy's attacks, and the artillery is the best. But if we have enough artillery shells, if we haven't enough, we just need to improvise. We need to have something to replace it. And FPV drones, like operators, several operators, and with enough like storage of the drones, enough units of the drones, they can stop this attack. So the same effect. And moreover, when you have a lot of drones in the front line, you can completely cut out of the logistic of the enemy forces. So it's very useful. Now a lot of countries are studying the Ukraine's experience, are studying like how we can use like 3-4 drones that cost 300 pounds to destroy the latest Russian tanks, the most modern Russian tanks, with all the equipment, with all the defense, anti-drone defense that costs millions of dollars by hit of like 1, 2, 3, 4 drones. So it's crazy technology, and this is safe. So you can use like this operator that operates these drones from a safe distance. So this operator is out of danger. You just need to have equipment, you don't lose your people. It's very very similar to the Western way of war. Russian way of war, we know like this meat attacks when they like lose thousands of soldiers for nothing. But the Western way means that you need to be care of your army, and FPV technology allows you to achieve that.
And now the big question. Does Volodymyr think drones are here to stay, or are they only a stopgap?
As we have a lot of experience of using these drones, we will use it. Anyway, if we will have enough artillery shells, it will be much easier to fight back, you know. But we will still use the drones, because it's amazing technology. This technology allows our soldiers to be safe and to repel Russian attacks from a safe distance. And Russians know that. The most thing they're afraid in the front line are not like bullets or artillery shells. They're afraid of FPV drones. Because we have a lot of good, great guys who are operators of these drones. They can literally make miracles. They can hunt down. I assume that in the nearest future we will have some kind of FPV tanks on the battlefield, because it's very important to have like a mobile gun that can shoot from a safe distance, and will not like be upset about if you will lose it. You will upset about money, not about human lives. You know, it's very important. And also this technology, FPVs, it's evolving completely. So now we have these self-guiding systems on FPV drones that allows to hit targets even if the connection with the operator is lost. So all the next wars that we have will contain some kind of experience of Ukraine. Every war, because FPVs showed so much effectiveness. So much Russian tanks and Russian troops were destroyed with this FPV. So for Russian soldier, much greater chance to die from FPV than from anything else in the front line.
That's where this tape stops, but we'll be back soon to play you through another episode of War on Tape.
And the rather disconcerting sound of what's either a lorry or could be a loitering drone.
Bloody big drone if it is. I think we just give up now. In the sinister, artillery-battered frontline forests of Kharkiv Oblast, everyone becomes a little drone happy after a while. But we do know that Russian drones are hunting, always hunting, so that nothing can move without jeopardy. Because of the threat, a monumental task becomes almost impossible. a vampire takes flight and bites. Yet often the frontline team simply has to go underground to survive. So we're down in the basement bunker of the Grad squad. In part one of this film about the 13th Hartier, aka the Billionaires Brigade, we played with their Robot-Dog and other killer ground drones. But this innovative unit, which sees itself as the template for a NATO-style Ukrainian army, also has to use less futuristic kit. Their Robot-Dog is fun, creepy, or just terrifying, depending on your point of view. And 3 million have viewed it so far. But the Hartier Brigade are also heavily involved in the aerial drone war, which is the trademark of this wider existential conflict. This is what we saw. A freezing winter's night, a few miles from the Russian border. Outside, snow covers the battlefield. But we're cozy and relatively safe here, in the basement of an abandoned cottage. Or perhaps we should call it the crypt. Because this is where, each night, a vampire of the 13th Hartier Brigade takes flight. This is the Vampire, a heavy attack drone which has been adapted from its original peacetime use of spreading fertilizer. Today it's much feared by Russia's frontline soldiers. They call it Baba Yaga, after the witch from Slavic folklore. The Vampire operates almost entirely at night, because it is large, noisy, and flies at an altitude of only 60 meters, making it vulnerable to small arms fire in daylight conditions. We're having to wait for the first mission of the night, because there is an air raid alert across Kharkiv Oblast. Ukrainian air defense jamming of incoming Russian Shahed drones could also affect their own outgoing vampires. At last, the air raid alert ends, the jamming ceases. The green light is given. The Vampire will fly tonight. The Vampire carries a high-definition thermal camera, which at night relays images of terrain and targets to its pilots. This is frontline cameraman Jamie Wiseman, as seen through the Vampire's lens, as it is prepared for its first mission of the night. And this is the Vampire's most destructive weapon, an 8-kilogram anti-tank mine, adapted to be dropped as a bomb. The effect on main battle tanks and infantry dugouts can be devastating. But these mines are in short supply. Tonight the Vampire will first be carrying a small aerial bomb. The cottage houses a 3-man crew of 2 drone pilots and a sapper to handle the weapons. They work 3 days on and 3 days off. It's like a monastic cell. This is the sapper, call sign Flint. He's loading the night's first bomb onto the Vampire. It's to be used against a Russian position dug under a destroyed infantry fighting vehicle, some 6 miles away. The Vampire is being prepared in blood-red torchlight. Everything done outside, such as weapon loading, launch and recovery, has to rely on such low-grade illumination to minimize the chance of being spotted from distance.
Оце опасно. Це ще зведено, так? Воно при ударі взривається.
First, he writes a message to the Russians on the bomb casing. It says that the drop is revenge for a missile strike on a Ukrainian shopping mall in 2023. The Vampire is lifted and taken through the snow to the launch pad outside the gate. We must retreat to the cellar in case of an accident on takeoff. The Vampire's bomb has been armed. We leave a camera outside, which catches the sound of the Vampire departing. And off it goes. Aside from Russian air defences, the main challenge tonight will be the strong prevailing wind. It's 10:30 at night. We're in the basement of a cottage in the north of Kharkiv Oblast. The front line is about kilometers away. We're with two drone pilots here who are currently flying a Vampire heavy drone against a Russian position. They've just launched from outside. The drone is carrying a small aerial bomb, a shrapnel bomb, which presumably will be used against an infantry target. I am watching on the monitor here as the Vampire, which is a large drone adapted from agricultural use, is heading towards its target. This is Sharper, who's the commander. He's 27. He was an interior designer before the army. And this is Colosseum, who worked on the railways.
Коротше, під підірваною технікою у них укриття. От, треба його розбити і зробити шкоди, скажімо так. Плюс, парни, потом следующий вылет за 5 коротких, пожалуйста, предупреждайте.
How far away is the drone now from the target?
8. About 8.
This is not a video game. There are men down there, Russian infantry, with perhaps only a few minutes left to live.
Не понимаю, зачем мне 5 коротких? Прикрытие будет только.
Ну, хер я знаю, наверное, да.
Their last moments will be recorded on high-definition film. Inside our cellar, the mood is calm.
Шапа, на ближнюю летим или на дальнюю? Ближнюю.
На ближню 18. Ми вже майже над координатами заходимо.
Да, плюс бачу.
With the strong crosswinds, Sharper is struggling to hold the Vampire on course.
Ой, дрон тяжелый вообще. Такие порывы.
Воно зверху, да.
Ні, ну вроді вітер менший зараз.
Наверху пориви дивись.
The object we can see wavering about on the screen is the warhead of the bomb.
Що, як вона у тебе полетить, що скажеш?
Ну, зараз сильні пориви, будемо зараз спробувати. Подивимося, куди вітер.
От, вправо.
Будемо поправку.
Когда днем сигнатурка светится, плюс-минус.
Ну, я понял, да. Будемо поправку вліво трошки брати по перекрестю.
Діду. Да, Лука на зв'язку. Мені ставили задачу іменно по жопі їй дати. Конкретно в металл? Да.
Капець нос.
Шапа. Слышал?
Да, плюс прямо по сигнатурі пробує, да?
Не, по крышке.
Ну, по кришці.
Не, именно по жопе. Конкретно, знаешь, да, вот конкретно, когда ты сейчас целишься, вот туда и нужно, грубо говоря, попасть.
Плюс, прийняв.
Точно.
Що це БМП, да, якась?
Да. Ну, страшно просто.
Мені кажется, як вліво качне, надо отпускати. Оп, пошло.
Bomb gone.
Есть розривчик.
An explosion.
Шо?
The darkness changes to brilliant light.
Ну, нормально. Я бы не сказал, что и снаряд видно.
На що, за дерево зачепилось?
Ні, розрив був на землі.
It looks like a direct hit.
Ну як на землі, по самій техніці.
Не, там чітке влучання, просто цей засвіт іде на дерево. Вимикаю трансляцію.
ТМ-ка ще
Для відоса буду пуль держати.
Ну да, там прям по жопке.
As the drone turns for home, analysis of the first drop begins. Did they hit the target? Will they have to go back to bomb the same target again tonight? The Russians sometimes try to take down the vampires by firing flares into the sky to illuminate the drone and then opening up with small arms. Occasionally, they even use their own kamikaze drones to trail the vampire back to its launch and control base, like the one we're in.
Speaking of their experience, like one year of flights, they had only 2 or 3 such cases. So mostly the Russians are trying to hit the vampire with drones.
At where they find it.
Yeah, when they locate it, they are just trying to hit it at the same moment.
Sometimes the Russians improvise. Here, a Russian Mavic reconnaissance drone tries to ram the much larger vampire out of the sky. It fails, bouncing off and falling away, a sparrow trying to take on an eagle. But it was worth a go. The Mavic costs a little more than $1,000. The Vampire 25 times as much. Some 20 minutes later, the Vampire returns. Well, the Vampire heavy drone behind me has just, in the last minute, returned from its first mission of the night to drop an aerial bomb on a Russian dugout, which was about 10 kilometers away. As soon as it landed, its batteries were taken out to be changed, and it is now being prepared immediately for its second mission, which will be another bombing raid over Russian lines. The Russian lines are nearest point to here is somewhere around 7 kilometers. It will be armed, recharged, and back in the air within 3 minutes of landing. The team has flown as many as 18 combat missions in one night. Once again, we retreat to the cellar for launch, and then watch the mission unfold. This one will have a different ending.
We can automatically return to home. But when we fly to target, yeah, I must get all this.
Шапа Микола на зв'язку. Старий тест.
Не прошу повторити.
Що по спутникам у тебе?
Є, ну просідають іноді буває.
А ти в польоті зараз?
Да, в польоті.
So on their monitor, the drone is rendered as a green triangle following the flight path, a blue line flight path to the target. It's being piloted here by Shahed. Only once it's dropped its bomb will then the autopilot take over and bring it back to base.
How far away from target?
100 meters.
100 meters. This is the crucial moment of the second mission to complete the destruction of the Russian dugout. The green cross is over the target. The wavering shape on the monitor you can see is the warhead of the bomb as Sharper tries to keep it steady enough to drop.
Столько ни хера не видно, кажется, картинка зависает.
Що ти вже не бачиш?
Зараз заходимо на ціль. Заходимо. Де-то тут.
Ось вона,
Да.
ось вона.
Да.
Куди бить?
Да. Мне просто
Так,
хорошо, что ты гоните, чуете, коры, я их не вижу.
Куди вражаємо?
Так само, да, по жопе.
А де жопа? Я не бачу стежки, яка заходить.
Так, а тепер поясніть по крестику, де жопа в неї. Слева, виходить?
Справа.
Справа.
Справа, да. Справа у тебя жопа.
Все, плюс.
Вот и плюс.
The vampire is above the target.
А яка іменно жопа? Або чого жопа?
Again, they struggle for stability in the high winds.
Жопа згорівшої техніки.
Все, я понял. So they are aiming the back part of the burnt vehicle.
Пішовський.
There it goes.
Так як пішла нижче. Не розрив.
Не розрив.
Nothing.
Видно,
Причому встряло в техніку і накольник не розірвався.
No brilliant flash like the first mission. The bomb has failed to explode. The pilots say they will reload the vampire when it returns and bomb the target again. We hear the sound of the drone coming into land. It's safely down and ready for its next mission. The anti-tank mine is ready to load, but the pilots have been told by headquarters to prepare for a different mission. First, the vampire's batteries must be changed and replaced with fully charged power packs.
Зараз будемо доставки робити, бо пріоритети. А потім вже сподіваємося, що не буде
Дві
подавлено.
маленькі, мабуть, можна поцепити.
Павербанки, їда, вода, клейонка, пленка.
Ні, в основному це провізія.
Вода і їжа.
A Ukrainian frontline position, which cannot be reached safely by vehicle or foot, urgently needs supplies. The crew call this kind of mission Air Uber Eats. The bomb bay is loaded with resupply packages. Within a few minutes, the vampire is ready to fly again. Air Uber Eats is on its way. Baba Yaga has become an angel of mercy. The following night, we're reminded of the Russian drone threat right across Ukraine. Midnight in the center of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second city. What you can hear is a Russian-launched Shahed kamikaze drone flying very low. In fact, it just passed over the roof of the house where we're staying tonight. It's a sinister sound. Our grandparents and great-grandparents must have thought the same about Nazi doodlebugs. An attack warning has appeared belatedly on the air raid app that we and most Ukrainians carry. In the next 30 seconds, the circling Shahed will crash and detonate. Let's go back into the forest of the northeastern front. Here, under the tree canopy, there is a degree of safety from Russian kamikazes. While we were filming this, a drone could be heard moving backwards and forwards over our position. The soldiers we were with did not know who was controlling it. The soldiers are from the 13th Brigade. They're not engaged in the cool cutting-edge stuff, for which their brigade is renowned. This is pure grunt work in an area that was recaptured from the Russians in 2022.
Careful.
One of them, called Kuzia, gives us a walking tour of their position.
And this is artillery?
No.
Yeah. This is what artillery can do to trees. Jamie, have you seen? Yeah, you can see the... Yeah. Some kind of Russian troop transport, a bus, which received a direct hit here in the forest. And I guess that must be some of the... is that from there? Yeah, that is part of it. All the time you can hear the artillery in the background. This is a Russian army ration for eating. Yeah. They are in position where the Russians were dug in 2022 before they were driven out. There's a lot of wreckage and these craters. These are craters or dugouts, but there's dugouts all around. A lot of rubbish left by the Russians, and a lot of damage to the trees where artillery, and you can still hear the artillery in the background, rumbling away and vibrating sometimes. And it would be a very peaceful, beautiful forest in other circumstances, but the detritus of war is all around us. It's not a peaceful place.
We hear an engine approaching.
And a rather disconcerting sound of what's either a lorry or could be a loitering drone.
Bloody big drone if it is. I think we just give up now.
Sometimes a glide bomb is dropped into the forest. This is the crater that one of them caused. And this is why we are here. Concealed under camouflage netting in a tank scrape deep in the forest, the Lion armoured recovery vehicle waits for darkness to fall. And this is its three-man crew. They're classic Generation X soldiers. Kuzia on the left used to be a digger driver. Pavlov in the middle drove vans, while the oldest soldier, call sign Grandpa, worked in a warehouse. Their average age is 44, and their wartime job is to rescue tanks and other armoured vehicles that have been disabled by enemy action or broken down. Most of the work is in or around the front line, where the Russian drone and artillery threat is highest, which is why, almost without exception, an already difficult and dangerous job has to be carried out at night.
It's not a glamorous job, but it's very important, and it can be very dangerous. These guys pull vehicles out while under mortar fire, and also there is the constant threat of the Russian FPV drones, which is why they have this, both the metal cage here, which is designed to stop drones, but also you can see the electronic warfare array on the back of their vehicle, which helps protect them to a certain degree. They also face, of course, heavy artillery, battery fire, and other anti-tank threats while they're doing their job. And they say once they get to the vehicle they're trying to recover, they have to do it as fast as possible. It's looped, yeah, okay, it's not so hard. This is the hawser. Yeah, this is Grandpa helping me. Okay. Oh, two big tow ropes. It's not really the kind of thing that you see on the M1, but this could get an armoured vehicle out of serious trouble. And this is the sort of stuff these guys are doing every day, every week. It's pretty impressive.
Daylight hours are spent sleeping, training, or preparing for the next mission. It's hard manual labour, but practice is vital, as we shall see tonight. they talk to us about the dangers of their duties.
So are they also recovering vehicles that have been disabled by enemy action?
Так. Ми, якщо техніка, у нас були такі евакуації, прямо от, був наступ, і хлопці там, при наступі там скочили там в яму, там відвалилось колесо. У нас така була евакуація, ми прилетіли, їх зацепили, прямо там, можна сказати, на полі бою. У нас такі були, в основному яка техніка не може доїхати своїм ходом, то ми її приїжджаємо, траси накинули, зацепили, утягнули.
Everybody we have in Britain, as I'm sure in Ukraine, if your car breaks down on the road, on the motorway, you can call the guy and they will come in a tow truck.
Yeah.
This is a much more dangerous form of vehicle recovery because they have to go to places where a location where a vehicle has already been targeted by the enemy.
Yeah.
And pull away. How do they, I mean, it is a dangerous job, right?
Ризиковано, правильно, ніж у звичайних.
I mean, he knows what I mean.
У нас, якщо ми знаємо заздалегідь, що у нас евакуація, є такі машини, що там, відбили їх, там вони стоять, що там, деякий час. Ми знаємо, що у нас там планується евакуація треба нам її евакуювати. Тоді ми розробляємо там план, дивимось, маршрути, все там, там ми довго, повністю. Але бувають такі евакуації, що це все дуже швидко. От ми сидимо, чергуємо, там, наприклад, наші там пішли на роботу, ми чергуємо. І тут хлоп нам дзвонять, срочно, машина стала, треба їхати, її забрати, поки її не розбили. І тоді вже, в основному ми як їдемо, у нас то, що риба у нас є, а то, що ми як їдемо на евакуацію, нас в основному ведуть. У нас з нами летить дрон, продивляється маршрут і все, тобто нам...
Розвідник.
Бо багато поночі робимо. Що, відомість погана, і нас веде дрон. З нами постійно...
Це щоб вони втратили дорогу?
Командири з нами постійно на зв'язку, все, щоб... бо буває таке, що виїжджаєш у місцевість, якої ти взагалі не знаєш. Ти по карті подивився, що ця місцевість, і все, а ти там ні разу не був. І починаєш ночі як ночі. Як немає орієнтирів, по полям їздиш, то...
Talking of drones, could they tell us a little bit about the threat that they face from enemy drones? Because...
Ми стараємось робити все дуже швидко. Ми прилітаємо по максимальному швидкому времени. У нас була така ситуація, ми колись забрали М-ку.
М113.
Так. Там недалеко за Липцями. То ми її зацепили, по-бистрому. Ми в основному, якщо ми їдемо цепляти машину, яку ми не знаємо ще, з нами їде ще водитель з цієї машини. Ми одразу, перед тим як виїхати, ми по-любому з ним розробляємо, як ми будемо цепляти, за що її там можна зацепити, які нам вуха треба, щоб ми туди не приїхали і не розвернулися, не поїхали, щоб ми вже знали наверняка. І стараємося проработати так, щоб все це було швидко. У нас була така ситуація, що ми прилетіли, ми швидко зацепили і уїхали. А в нашу сторону вже летів дрон з ТМ-кою, зі скидом, танковою міною. Він нас потеряв, ми просто швидко уїхали, і він там скинув потім міну десь, чи пацанам не знаю, куди він скинув, до нас він не успів. Не повторив, чуть більше може там. Це треба, каже, яка техніка. Є така техніка, що ти приїхав, закрівки тільки і поїхав. А є така, що через скоби треба цепляти. В принципі, ми стараємося так, щоб минути 2-2,5, щоб ми вискочили, зацепились, до 5. Потому что, артиллерия там, навестись, сколько там, 4 минуты надо, если нормально навестись.
Ага.
И нам надо вложиться в это...
Це проміжок до 4 хвилин.
Да, щоб,
Is it best not to think about what could happen?
Часу нема, чим скоріше, тим лучше.
They've only been together for 5 months, but it's clear that they're already a close-knit team.
And in a couple of hours, the guys who are the crew of this vehicle will be going off on their next mission to pull an armoured vehicle off the battlefield. We don't know yet what kind of armoured vehicle. It might be a tank. but they generally operate in the hours of darkness because of the drone threat, and as the light will be fading later this afternoon, they will start this vehicle up, reverse it out of its vehicle pit, and then off into the front line. Dusk is approaching, and with it the start of the recovery team's working day. We rendezvous with the crew at the headquarters of one of Shahed Brigade's tank companies. During combat recovery missions, Kuzia and his mates carry small machine pistols, which are easier to handle inside the Lion's cramped interior than assault rifles. We learn that their job tonight is to rescue a disabled tank from its woodland position to the north of Kharkiv city. This is Samurai, the tank company's commander. He'll also be on the mission tonight.
Вони питають про місію, що будуть хлопці робити самі.
Евакуація іншої машини.
Окей.
Наших
Суміжних
приборів.
суміжних. А прибор там у них там механізовано.
Yeah, it's Cobra.
Good.
А, це ж понятно. Окей?
Yeah, very good. What are they called?
Як називається? Що це? Коротше, бублики з м'ясом.
Бублики з м'ясом?
І в клярі.
The Billionaires Brigade, as Hatia are known, do hospitality better than most.
Ми бачимо, що пані Анна котлет смажила. Та от це ж ми хотіли, познімати і все пропустили.
Поїхала красоту, народ.
This is Anna, the company's celebrated cook.
Like our commander took her.
Like football transfer.
Yeah, football transfer.
Darkness. The mission is about to begin. Samurai leaves on a quad bike with an armed escort riding pillion. The Lion is also on the move, growling along the nighttime highways in the direction of the front line. This is classic Ukrainian winter mud. A tank recovery vehicle can get down here easily enough, but that's the problem. Our 4x4 flounders in what has been churned up by the Lion's powerful tracks.
Каже, в началі тільки ямки. Так тут уже нема різниці.
For a minute or two, it seems we can go no further.
Та отут. Тут ж нема ямок.
Утром тут же только что проезжали. От пониженных ключей на пониженных буксу, блядь.
Все, понял, дякую. Дякую.
Сейчас, если что, туда съезд, приедет, выходит и подтянет.
Бремка моя приїде, вона тягне.
Finally, we get through. The disabled tank is on the edge of a wood. Around it already, there is a hive of activity.
The armoured recovery crew is here now and is trying to pull the tank out of its position so it can be taken back to the depot. They've got it attached to a tow bar, and so far they've moved it about 3 or 4 feet, but they are struggling. It's very muddy, it's pitch black. We're not right on the front line, but we're sufficiently close for it to be a meaty target for Russian kamikaze drone operators, which is why this recovery is taking place at night time.
In peacetime, the tank would be removed at relative leisure in daylight. Now, speed is of the essence, and only red torches can be used safely to light the work. There's also a little natural illumination. The operation is taking place under a full moon that would be romantic in other circumstances. The Lion, which can pull 75 tons, takes the strain once again. Still, the tank refuses to budge more than a few feet. The clock is ticking well into overtime. The men struggle to engage and disengage the two tow bars as they try to angle the tank between trees. A sense of urgency now. Thermal drones are a threat. Finally, the Lion has got good purchase. The crippled tank begins to move through the wood into the field beyond. The tank will be vulnerable in daylight if left here. It will now be hauled back up the track we struggled to come down, to where a transporter is waiting. Meanwhile, the thermal drone threat remains high. They've already taken far longer than desired to get this far. Finally, the disabled tank has been extracted from the wood. It's taken half an hour, but the Russians haven't seen or interfered. It will live to fight another day, as will Kuzia and his comrades. The operation took far longer than usual, but Samurai is pleased. As we return to base, the mood is good. In a hole in the ground in a rain-swept wood, just behind the Kharkiv front line, a monster stirs. This is not an ULEZ compliant monster. This Grad launcher belongs to 13th Hartia Brigade. It's been moved out of its camouflage tank scrape to prepare for a fire mission against a Russian position a few miles from here. It's a cold, wet January morning. We're just behind the front line in Kharkiv in a wood. Behind me you can see one of the original Soviet-era Grad launcher trucks. It's just emerged from its hole in the ground in the wood. It's possibly there will be a fire mission. Ammunition is quite short, which is the story of Ukraine's war at the moment. But the Grad has got 40 tubes, about 38 of them are loaded, I can see. And the average range for one of their fire missions is something like 18 kilometers, just over 10 miles. But with special ammunition provided by Serbia, they can sometimes reach up to targets 40 kilometers from the launch point. There's a constant grumble and crash of artillery. You might be able to pick it up behind me.
It's not one of the most fiercely contested sector of the 1,000-mile front line, but it is very active. And but today, with the rain, hopefully the drones will not be particularly effective.
The hope that the rain will keep away hostile drones proves to be in vain, as we shall see.
This is the commander of this particular Grad crew. His call sign is Black, and he's from the city of Dnipro. Commander, could you tell me what kind of targets your crew is usually launching against?
Зазвичай це скупчення піхоти, техніки, а також бліндажі і в основному це піхота.
I saw the truck is kept in a dug-in position under the forest here. What is the enemy drone threat like in this sector for you?
Ну, іменно в нашому районі загроза дронів дуже висока. Також це ланцети, зала, також і FPV-шки долітають. Тобто у нас капонір укритий сітками якраз від цього, щоб не попали і також не видно.
Ні, друже, я перепрошую. Просто по країнам скажи, будь ласка, якщо можна, які країни виробляють БК, які ви використовуєте?
Нам привозять, як і ще знаходять Совдеп, так як і Англію привозять, і Польща, якщо не плутаю.
When you're on a fire mission, obviously there is a danger of being seen and counter-battery fire and drones. Do you have a kind of a maximum time for which you can get into a position, fire, and then leave the position?
Так, час на свіст, все залежить від слаженості роботи самого екіпажу. Для всього цього нам потрібно, щоб підработав град хвилин так 5. Це ще з тим учетом, що підготовлена позиція, виставлена бусоль.
Just one final question for the commander. What hopes do you have for the year 2025? We're just into this new year.
Before he can answer, there is an urgent interruption.
Приближается меньше километра к нам. Сигнал чіткий чи не знаю.
DJI-ка менше кілометра. Що робимо?
В укриття?
Не знаю.
Ні, я кажу в укриття.
Окей.
Richard, hello, what's going on? Yeah, okay, there's a drone very close. We're having to, the Grad launch it back in the shelter and we're going to have to go to the shelter ourselves. Okay, go.
I'm showing the warning signals on a drone detector.
What can you see?
I see that we have strong radio signal. We see, according to this, I can say that we have video transmission. According to this number, I can say that this drone is somewhere less than 1 kilometer.
1 kilometer from here, yeah. It doesn't tell you what kind of drone, though.
According to the frequency, it's some kind of DJI Scout drone.
Okay, like a Mavic or something.
No,
bigger.
Like Mavic or something like this. For Mavic, it's too strong signal. You see, we have blue color.
Yeah.
Someone try to jam this frequency.
Oh, okay.
So instead of witnessing a Grad launch, we find ourselves taking shelter in the basement of an abandoned cottage.
А там контрактор не забув?
А там уже дежурный.
Ну да, мини-пост.
Oh, cool. So we're down in the basement bunker of the Grad squad. There's an alarm on because there's a reconnaissance drone, Mavic, DJI-style reconnaissance drone within a kilometre. They're trying to jam it, but it's very close, and so we're now underground, where it's very cosy. We have a little pot-belly stove here, and this is where the guys live, as you can see. It's 4 bunks, and we're as safe as we possibly could be in the circumstances, as usual.
Сделали чай.
So this guy also sends rounds here.
What's the dog's name? Jack.
We leave a camera and microphone outside to record the artillery duel. but it also catches the birdsong, the haunting duet. The artillery strike is postponed, but the war in the wildlife carries on without us.
Come fetch. Fetch.
Meet Robo-Dog. Today she's in a playful mood. She doesn't bark and she doesn't bite. But if you're with the Russian military, she can do a whole lot worse than nip your ankle. Better to have her on your side.
This dog is much more obedient than my greyhound.
In this two-part male Frontline film, shot in the winter of 2025, cameraman Jamie Wiseman and I travel to the Kharkiv Oblast frontline areas. We meet the futuristic ground drones deployed by Ukraine's most innovative combat unit, which has been given the nickname the Billionaires Brigade. We spend an evening in a vampire's crypt near the Russian border and watch the vampires bite. We see how a disabled tank is recovered under cover of darkness, while the ever-present drone threat interrupts an old-fashioned artillery strike.
Okay, there's a drone very close, and we're going to have to go to the shelter ourselves.
Frontline is spending a week with Robo-Dog's owners, the so-called Billionaires Brigade. The unit claims to be the template for a future cutting-edge Ukrainian army. Certainly it's among the most innovative and glamorous of the frontline formations here. As such, the brigade is able to recruit Ukraine's best officer cadets, counts a number of celebrities among its volunteer soldiers, and is no stranger to visiting global dignitaries. It might have started as a territorial defence unit, but Dad's army it is not. So who are these poster boys? The 13th Hatia Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine, as it's officially titled, was founded and funded in 2022 by Vsevolod Koshimenko, one of the country's wealthiest businessmen. Most of its battles have taken place inside its native Kharkiv Oblast. It led the charge to the Russian border during Ukraine's successful Kharkiv counteroffensive in the autumn of 22. Last May, the unit stopped in its tracks the Russians' renewed push towards Kharkiv city. While to the south of us in Donbas, the Russians are advancing relentlessly, up here on the battlefield between Kharkiv city and the Russian border, the invaders are not only being held by Hatia, but in some places pushed back. Hatia believes in a more cerebral approach to combat. Mission planning and execution follow NATO rather than Soviet protocols. Each attack is prepared and reviewed in detail, using 3D printer-made models and specialist software. A Hatia S3 planning officer spoke to Frontline about the brigade's adoption of the 7-step military decision-making process, which is followed in the West.
Найбільш важливі – це отримання завдання, після якого йде аналіз місії, який складається із вивчення місцевості, погодних умов, противника та, власне, більш детального аналізу поставлених задач і власних сил, які нам доступні для виконання цього завдання.
Які типи відпрацювань, оцих rehearsals, ви робите в підготовці до місії?
По-перше, це відпрацювання на макеті місцевості, який за великим рахунком нагадує карту, де ми використовуємо модельки, роздруковані на 3D-принтері. Другий елемент такого відпрацювання – це вже на більшому макеті, де, скажімо, командири малих піхотних груп, командири машин присутні. А третій етап, найбільш масштабний, це вже відпрацювання на самій місцевості, коли підрозділи у повному бойовому спорядженні з своїми машинами бойовими відпрацьовують найбільш важливі етапи виконання завдання, такі як розгортання в бойовий порядок на техніці, спішування і, власне, ті дії, наприклад, дії штурмових груп, які передбачаються при, власне, виконанні завдання.
This is how that theory looks in practice. The footage you're about to see now, provided to Frontline by Hatia, chronicles a combat operation in the second half of 2024, from the planning process to the full-blown assault on Russian positions in a forest northeast of Kharkiv city. Some of the footage has been censored for security reasons. Here we see unit commanders being walked and talked through a floor model of the operational area and their individual roles.
Ми робимо все для того, щоб ви виконали задачу і залишили цілими неушкодженими.
A diversionary feint is explained.
Щоб враг там думав, що ми прямо.
The attack's armoured thrust is practiced for a final time. The assault troops gather in darkness and are assigned to their vehicles.
Все, заезжайте, там.
Все, закрили.
Головне, щоб мама не побачила. Мама думає, що я вдома.
Слава Україні!
Sunrise. The attack is about to be launched. As Hatia's armour advances on the enemy tree line, watched by friendly drones, artillery is beginning to fall. This is the moment of truth for the assault infantry. Basic instructions from the troop commander. The assault troops have been given dozens of GoPro cameras to record and later analyse the unfolding attack. What you're watching is not an exercise. This is a close-quarter small arms battle on the edge of the forest. Tension back in the control room. The Hatia assault troops are on top of a Russian dugout.
Правый фланг вперед! Держим!
Правый вперед! Продвижение, по возможности координаты.
Now the enemy is hitting back. Grads begin to fall into the forest along the line of advance.
Стопай! Стопай!
The small arms battle intensifies as more Russian positions are reached. Grenades are being used. Ukrainian attack drones now enter the fray.
Нам надо 60-кой, отработать 60-кой.
Дай мне дистанцию и азимут, дай дистанцию и азимут.
Ukrainian artillery is also engaging the Russian positions. The pressure begins to tell on the defenders. The Ukrainian drones record Russian soldiers fleeing their positions.
Своя!
Clearing of enemy positions with grenades and small arms fire is underway. The fighting is intense. Here, a Ukrainian throws a grenade. Another grenade into another Russian trench. Here is an enemy dugout with casualties.
Отработали около 5-6 нор. Все гранаты туда закинули. Жестокий убийца.
Frontline understands that as a result of this assault, the Russians suffered more than 60 casualties, lost a howitzer and an anti-tank firing position, and were driven back to their next line of defence. Hatia can get their hands as dirty as any other infantry brigade, but what we really wanted to see were the combat robots for which the unit is known. The Ukrainians call them ground drones. It took a little time to arrange the demonstration. That's because the remote-controlled machines are already being used on the battlefield. They're not toys or prototypes. In fact, Hatia claims to have carried out the world's first ever remote-controlled machine-only attack on a Russian position in Kharkiv in December. To view the evidence, we drove north to Kharkiv from Donbas on one of the few truly wintry days in January. The drone unit operates out of a secret workshop in Kharkiv city. It's led by 20-somethings rather than the Generation X's you tend to find in charge of other units on the front line. In fact, the average age of the whole of the Cartier Brigade is only 31. These are young scientists or gamers who've brought their peacetime skills to develop this high-tech warfare. Jess, aged 20, is the unit's coder.
Я займаюся налаштуванням польотних контролерів. Це такі платки всередині дрона, які допомагають дрону приймати команди від оператора. Тобто я займаюся налаштуванням цих платок, периферії, для того, щоб дрон розумів, куди йому їхати, де повернути і взагалі що робити.
How does it feel to work? How do you feel about working for such a special unit?
Ну, в цілому мені подобається і дуже цікаво працювати в цьому напрямку, тому що підрозділ дуже перспективний, те, чим ми займаємось, поки що не так розвинено, тому розвиватися дуже цікаво. І також мені подобається працювати в команді з провідними фахівцями, людьми, тобто фахівцями своєї справи.
Okay. And could I ask you finally, what did you do before the full-scale invasion?
До того, як я пішла служити, я навчалась, працювала, тобто жила своє звичайне життя. Просто намагалася розвиватися в зовсім в іншій справі, але в якийсь момент я усвідомила, що тут моє місце.
Thank you very much, Jess.
Pan-26 is the unit's deputy commander. A molecular biologist by training, he was about to begin a PhD in Germany when the full-scale invasion began. His particular interest was biological evolution. Now he's involved in the development of war machines.
What we're looking at actually are ground drones. These are sort of robots that can be remotely controlled on the battlefield, yes?
Of course, they can be remotely controlled, and we usually control them remotely and trying to do it as far from battlefield as it's possible for safety of our operators. This particular drone is used for logistics.
Well, we can see it's carrying a lot of firewood here.
Yeah, it is because we used it for testing its capabilities.
But it could be used for ammunition.
Of course, ammunition, any supply.
I guess it's actually replacing human beings for doing or more vulnerable vehicles which need to be manned by human beings.
Yes, you're right. It replacing humans, making their job easier, safer, and also replacing other vehicles that are more vulnerable and more costly.
And I can see these, they have either tracks or they have heavy tires. These are capable of going across pretty rough terrain, yeah?
Yes, but everything has its limit.
Could you tell me, I know this unit is still pretty secret and confidential, but I mean, how long have you been operating on the battlefield?
Our unit operating on a battlefield for around half a year.
And that's on the Kharkiv front, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. And are you, I know this is early days yet, but are you encouraged by the results of your operations with these ground drones?
We enjoy our result because we don't have a lot of people. Each person highly specialized. We do a lot of work with small amount of people, and we like it.
And I understand that these vehicles, these drones, are developed entirely in Ukraine, yes?
They manufactured in Ukraine, but the majority of them are upgraded and modified by us before we use them.
The final question I was going to ask you is, so are we actually looking at the future of warfare here?
We are not looking at the future, we are looking already at modern warfare.
This is the reality of warfare in 2025.
Of course, it is our reality.
All kinds of military robots are to be found here, from machines that can lay anti-tank mines or mount machine guns to heavy load carriers. All are controlled remotely, obviating the need for a human to be in the line of fire. Ukraine is increasingly short of soldiers. Such robots could provide the answer to the shortfall. The star of the show, because it, or rather she, is so very strange, is Robo-Dog. This is the 22-year-old unit commander, called sign Happy. In repose, Robo-Dog looks like an oven-ready chicken. except a green light has now started blinking in its head.
This is 13 Brigade's famous Robot-Dog, which is waking up from its sleep.
Robo-Dog is amazing, and also more than a little creepy. Unlike the other robots deployed by the brigade, she was not developed in Ukraine.
It's amazing.
She's an adaptation of the Go-2 model, made by the Chinese company Robotics. Off the shelf, the Go-2 costs a little over £2,000.
Sit.
Hatia has been trialling Robo-Dog for close-quarter battlefield reconnaissance, using its stealth capabilities and powerful head-mounted camera that can relay real-time video feed to an operator several kilometres away.
Beg. Up.
Unfortunately, it doesn't speak English.
It doesn't speak English.
It's been reported that both the US Marines and Chinese Army have tested an armed version of Robo-Dog, the Marines with an anti-tank missile, the Chinese with an assault rifle. A cavalcade of battle robots sets off to the countryside. This is all very weird. This creature also belongs to the unit. It's a real cat, by the way. We arrive in a field a few miles outside Kharkiv city. Robo-Dog is let off her leash and shows a surprising turn of pace. You can see how well she is camouflaged, merging into the mud. In case you're wondering, I say she because dog is a feminine noun in both Ukrainian and Russian.
This is an anti-tank mine laying drone. Now, in combat conditions, the operator would be several kilometers away and would be controlling it via a Mavic drone overhead. And I will just show you how it works. One mine at a time. All done remotely and without any particular risk to the operator. We now have an anti-tank barrier on this part of the field. This particular ground drone is designed to mount a 7.62 machine gun somewhere here. It has been used in combat and it has been used to attack Russian positions. Again, it will be used remotely. The operator can be several kilometers away, and he'll be directing it. She will be directing it via a Mavic-type reconnaissance drone overhead. Let's see it move. You see, it's got plate armor, and the turret also revolves. This kind of technology is not the future of ground combat. This is actually happening now on the battlefield.
Here we see footage of one of the Ukrainian machine gun drones successfully attacking a Russian position inside Kursk. I'm invited to take control of one of the small fast robots that could perform several tasks from carrying supplies to kamikaze attacks.
It's great fun.
But one's attention keeps returning to the sinister, crowd-pleasing Robo-Dog.
Jump. Very good. Yeah. One final trick. Roll over. Roll over.
This particular Robo-Dog doesn't bark, but has been programmed to say something very rude to any Russian it encounters.
Русский давайся.
Okay, that might have to be bleeped. We saw it in the workshop where it did a few tricks. Now it's out in the field, and you can see it's been running around this field very easily. It's got a camera in its nose which it uses for reconnaissance. It seems very agile, particularly on this the flat surface here. It can do a variety of amusing tricks, but its intent, its purpose is deadly serious. Sit. Very good, dog. Very good.
This footage is giving a slightly misleading impression, as it is the Robo-Dog's controller, a soldier standing just off camera, who is the one following my instructions, rather than the drone itself. No doubt, with the evolution of AI, that day will come. Now let's look at what Robo-Dog saw of this sequence, or rather the images conveyed to her pilot.
Good dog. Go fetch. Fetch. This dog is much more obedient than my greyhound.
Like a spaniel after a walk on a wet winter's day, she needs a bath. Nor is she completely sure-footed.
This is some considerable leap forward from K9, who appeared in Doctor Who while I was during my childhood.
Meanwhile, around us, the more conventional war carries on. In the distance, smoke begins to rise from the latest glide bomb hit on Kharkiv city, while further along the tree line, a mobile anti-Shahed drone team waits for dusk and the next Russian onslaught. Their anti-aircraft gun is from a much older generation of war technology to the ground drones frolicking on the field. And that is probably the technology, deployed in huge quantities, which will count in the end. It just keeps coming after you, like a monster in a bad dream. And there's nothing you or anyone else can do to stop them. Frontline doesn't normally use footage shot by the Russian military, but what you're watching is evidence of a critical development on the battlefields of Ukraine, which will have ramifications far beyond. It's a so-called wonder weapon, an unjammable drone controlled by a fiber-optic cable that electronic warfare defenses simply cannot stop. And here we see proof of that. Hit after hit after hit. The white triangles on the Ukrainian vehicles suggest they were taking part in the Kursk operation inside Russia. During the collapse of the Kursk salient and retreat back across the border, Ukrainian forces were indeed harried by these weapons, but they're now being deployed in several other sectors of this existential war.
Ukrainian soldiers we've spoken to who've been in sectors where the Russians are using these have said, fatalistically, if they see you, if they target you, that's it. There's nothing you can do to stop them. No jamming, no electronic warfare, you just got to hope for the best.
What you're watching is the aftermath of an attack by a new weapon that since last autumn has brought a different kind of fear to the Donbas battlefield. A Ukrainian army jeep has been hit and set ablaze. 2 of the crew are already dead, 4 wounded. The survivors are being evacuated in a second vehicle, which is also coming under fire. The rescue vehicle is equipped with an electronic warfare array to jam conventional FPV kamikaze drones. But in this scenario, it can provide no defense. Because the weapon that destroyed the first jeep was a fiber-optic drone. This is Sergeant Runa, one of Ukraine's most celebrated female combat soldiers. She shot the footage you've just seen.
Так, тому що ніякий реп не бере ці дрони на оптоволокні, тобто ти його нічим не заглушиш і від цього ніяк не спасешся. Тобто якщо вже оптоволокно працює, то там наверняка.
This is the new weapon that is changing the battlefield in Ukraine. This is a fiber-optic kamikaze drone. In this film we look at the rising threat of the fiber-optic drone, which the Russians have been using here on the Donbas frontline for several months now. This is why they're so feared. We're given exclusive access to one of the first Ukrainian units to deploy the game-changing weapon. We also journey to the crucial Kharkiv pocket to visit a battle-scarred and under-pressure Marine battalion. They've also been targeted by Russian fiber-optic FPVs. We meet the young Marine surgeon who carried out 184 amputations in just 2 months, and we learn why stray animals can be deadly on a modern battlefield. This is what we saw. Over the last 18 months, the Frontline team has witnessed drone warfare's deadly technology race. From the use of high-street Mavics as reconnaissance machines, to their adaptation as bombers, and the advent of the kamikaze FPVs, which changed the war again. Each advance in one side's drone capability is usually countered by an improvement in the other's electronic warfare defenses. That is, the defender will try to find a means to jam the radio signals with which an attacking drone pilot controls their machine. Here's a Russian radio-controlled kamikaze FPV drone that was recently jammed and taken down by our old friend Lieutenant Oleg's unit. But what if a drone could be piloted some other way? One that would prevent enemy interference, that would make it unjammable. So that like the pursuing creature in your nightmare, Like the shark in Jaws, there is just no escape. A drone workshop behind the Donbas front. It's the usual organised chaos of bomb-making equipment and spare parts. That's how the war works here. But what we've really come here to see is the new type of unjammable drone that everybody's been talking about. We've seen for maybe a year and a half now the impact of kamikaze FPV drones. But those drones are vulnerable to electronic warfare, to jamming. This, which is being seen in increasing numbers on the battlefield, the Russians in particular use them in large numbers, is a drone that is controlled by fiber-optic cable. Spool here underneath might have up to 10 kilometers or more of the cable, and it's through the cable that the drone pilot is controlling it. It is unjammable in that sense, and they're causing a lot of concern, particularly on the Ukrainian side of the front line. As you can see, the Ukrainians have them as well. I say this particular one has an RPG warhead on top. The whole rig might cost somewhere around $1,000, $1,500, and of course, like its less sophisticated radio-controlled FPV brethren, it can disable or even take out a main battle tank, which costs maybe $4 million. First, briefly, let's outline the technology that makes the fiber-optic drone a nightmare for the soldiers on both sides. The fiber-optic cable transmits data using light pulses through a thin strand of glass or plastic. This allows high-speed data transmission over long distances with high bandwidth and minimal signal loss. Now have a look at this. This is the fiber-optic cable which controls these kamikaze drones. Almost gossamer thin. It's very much like a fishing line. It can't be broken by pulling it, but it can be snapped like that because it contains glass, which the signals travel along, like tooth floss. But it makes for a deadly weapon. Unlike an ordinary FPV, the pilot always has a physical connection with the fiber-optic drone. Basically, it's like flying a kite, a deadly kite, with 10 kilometers of string attached. A Ukrainian military source told Frontline that drones with 20 kilometers of cable are being tested. 40 kilometers might even be possible. This is Fast, a fiber-optic drone pilot from the 24th Brigade, which has been firefighting Russian advances along various frontline sectors. I ask him how the new drone works.
Досить просте. Ми використовуємо стандартний дрон FPV, знімаємо з нього всі передатчики інформації, там, відео і управління, і підключаємо його через платку прямо до польотника. Ця платка конвертує управління і відео в оптичний сигнал, і по оптичному проводу 10 кілометрів в цьому варіанті передає до пульта управління і відео екрану.
Can you tell us the advantages that the fiber-optic drone has over a normal FPV?
Переваги оптоволокна – це стабільна картинка, відеозображення стабільне і нема проблем з управлінням. Тобто відпадають проблеми радіогоризонту, подавлення РЕП, яке зараз дуже сильно і потужно розвивається. В нього також є свої недоліки, але саме оптика дозволяє обходити РЕП. І там, де звичайні дрони не справляються, допомагає оптика. Наприклад, звичайні дрони, вони не можуть дуже низько опуститися через те, що радіохвиля не огибає гори, будинки. За допомогою саме оптики воно може летіти на мінімальній висоті, вже не зважаючи на рельєф місцевості.
Which means, for example, that a fiber-optic drone can lie in wait on the ground by a road, in ambush, rather than have to loiter aloft, where it's vulnerable to air defense. Could you tell us a little bit about the sort of targets you would fly a drone like this against, and under what circumstances would you use it?
Кожна дія його розміром катушки оптики, ми його використовуємо, коли йде вже масивні атаки з залученням потужних ребів, коли вже стандартні звичайні дрони не можуть через протидію долетіти до цілі. Також в складних рельєфних місцевостях, там, де горизонт не дозволяє залетіти звичайному дрону до цілі. Більше ж його використовуємо як останню ланку оборони, щоб ворог не доходив до піхоти. Тобто знищуючи техніку до того, як вона прибуде до захисників. З повагою, тому що, кажу, на нього не діють реби, які в нас вже теж є в досить великій кількості, і його практично неможливо заглушити.
Do you think these fiber-optic drones will eventually completely replace the radio-controlled FPVs?
Ні. Як вже доказує практика, в кожного є своя ніша використання. Тобто поцепити на нього величезну дальності, в середній дистанції звичайної FPV плюс 15, 20, а то і 30 кілометрів. Не буває якось такої вундервафлі, яка зробить революцію. Знайдуть протидію і ним.
And this could, but with the ammo, it could destroy a tank that might be worth $4 million.
Може, але все одно. Не треба думати, що з першого попитку знищить танк. Танк має захист, і щоб пробити його динамічний захист, треба використовувати тандемні боєприпаси, які важко вцепити на звичайний дрон через їхні габарити. Тому ми використовуємо 2-3 дрона, щоб вразити один танк.
It's not going to fire this thing, is it?
Let's watch a fiber-optic drone take off. I'm told it has to be flown smoothly, no jerky changes of direction, again like a kite. One Ukrainian infantryman suggested to me that the best way to escape was to take cover in forest or thick undergrowth, in which the fiber-optic cable might get snagged. That was a hopeful guess, rather than a proven fact. A Donbas winter's morning, just as dawn is breaking, we set off to reach a frontline unit which has been targeted by these new drones. As the Russians push forward, getting from A to B in Donetsk Oblast gets ever more difficult. To get to the Karakova pocket from Kramatorsk while avoiding the Pokrov's Russian kamikaze drone zone, you have to perform a big detour west and south via Dobrobilya. We're not the only traffic taking this route. A Leopard tank is also on the way to the Karakova front. The early morning light is beautiful, the situation less so. Our destination is the 37th Separate Marine Brigade. Few units have had a tougher war. Most recently they fought in Touretsk. This is from the highlights reel of their drone operators from that front line. Their cavalry was the unsuccessful Ukrainian effort last year to force a bridgehead on the eastern bank of the Dnieper, around the village of Krinky. In late 2023, the Marine Corps conducted amphibious assault landings from the western shore and took Krinky, hoping to drive further inland. That proved impossible. The Ukrainians had to abandon their tiny bridgehead in July last year, after months of close-quarter fighting against enormous odds. On a battlefield measuring 1 kilometer deep by 110 meters wide, the Krinky operation officially cost the Corps 260 dead, with a further 800 missing, presumed killed, according to report. In other words, 1,000 men were lost for a single village that could not be held, an expensive diversion at best, a bloody disaster otherwise. Last October, the 37th were transferred to the Karakova front to help try to block the Russian advance, which has since overrun Karakova itself and now aims to envelop the crucial logistics hub of Pokrovsk to the north. Our first stop was to have been the Marines' main casualty stabilization point. A stabilization point is a casualty station just behind the front line, where wounded servicemen are first given medical aid by qualified doctors rather than combat medics, in order to keep them alive until they reach a hospital. But the Russian artillery had got there first. 2 near misses took off the casualty station's roof, destroyed equipment inside and out, and left the medical staff in shock. This is the 2nd Battalion's chief medic.
Yesterday we have a big damage our stabilization point. It was destroyed by artillery of our enemy. Our people safe, but we have a big loss in our medical equipment, medicines, and also 2 ambulances was destroyed.
Oh, so has this happened to you before?
Yes, of course, but we try to change location every 2 or 3 weeks because in this area it's very difficult to be safe. Yes. And also we have to be nearby the front line, and that's why we almost all the time we change location.
We meet at the battalion's only surviving stabilization point, which turns out to be a shipping container converted into a one-bedroom emergency room, under camo netting beside an abandoned cottage.
Behind me you can see the mobile medical pod, which is being run by the 37th Marine Brigade. They're currently fighting in the Karakova pocket, which is getting smaller and smaller as the Russians advance. This is the main focus of their casualty station frontline medical support since yesterday morning, when their larger, more static medical station, casualty stabilization point, was hit by 2 Russian artillery shells. Equipment destroyed, ambulances destroyed, nobody killed, but it was rendered inoperable. And now they have to rely on this one-bed facility. It's small, snug, it's well equipped, but it only has 1 bed. And this is where seriously wounded Marines are taken when they're hit in the Karakova pocket. In the background, you can hear constant rumble of artillery. It's like a sort of thunderstorm, and it shows how close the Russians are getting and how far they're advancing. The situation here is very difficult. The Marines have been in this sector since October last year. Previously, you can hear the artillery again, previously they were in Kherson launching attacks on the Russian position on the left bank using assault craft. Now they've been thrown into a different kind of problem, which is trying to stop the Russians advancing beyond Karakova.
3 things struck us about this desolate location. It's very cold and very windy, and above all, the sound of the artillery pounding the Karakova pocket is incessant. One of the frontline evacuation drivers is having a smoke. You can see how cold it is. It's here we meet a remarkable young combat surgeon.
It's very cold. You can probably hear the constant artillery in the background. We're near the Karakova pocket. I'm with Ilya, who is a surgeon in the 37th Marine Brigade. Now, Ilya has been on active service all over the front line since the full-scale invasion.
Ilya's war started on the first day of the full invasion, February 24, 2022, when he was a civilian doctor at a hospital in Mykolaiv.
Від того дня я провів 260 діб в лікарні на нулі в Миколаєві, тобто в приїзді Миколаїв, 3-я міська лікарня, це туди, куди звозили всіх поранених.
This onslaught produced a remarkable and macabre statistic.
За перші 2 місяці війни, тобто від 24 лютого по 22 квітня, я виконав 184 ампутації кінцівок.
At the end of that year, Ilya joined the Marines. Since then, his amputation times have improved dramatically.
Ми коли були останній раз на стабілізаційному пункті в Комарі, який перед цим був знешкоджений ворогом, ми, підміняючи наших побратимів, я виконав оперативне втручання з ампутації нижньої кінцівки десь приблизно за 25 хвилин. За нормальних умов така операція займає приблизно 40-45 хвилин. Якщо це в госпітальному та звичайному, не в опосередкованому відділенні, то це може тривати десь до 1,5 години.
On the Tourette's front, he worked in appalling conditions.
Тобто, відповідно до того, що я знаходжуся в метр висоти, то мені ще могли закинути 3-4 людини тяжко поранених, яким я мав надавати допомогу, спиняти кровотечу і тому подібне. Все отак в півзігнутому положенні, на так от скорюченому, це все от просто в банально скорюченому положенні. Я не виходив з цього бліндажа днів 5, я не міг розтягнутися.
Here in Donbas, he labours under the severe drone threat.
В даному випадку ми маємо більше роботу з грою дронів. Тут по 10 дронів на 1 квадратний метр, як би не хотілося. Тому, якщо тебе не вбило від першого дрону, то значить ти наживка для другого дрону. Безпечного місця наразі в Україні немає. В мене на тілі є навіть напис. Зграю сам чи других. Консумор аліас ест.
The Russians particularly want to kill medics like him.
І навіть офіцери, звичайні офіцери, в них по коштах за кожного вбитого офіцера їм платять менше, ніж за вбитого одного лікаря. Їм за лікаря платять на $200-300 більше, ніж за вбитого офіцера. А розвалений такий стаб-пункт, отакий стаб-пункт, вони
взагалі там підлітають до небес. Тому, якби наш ворог притримувався Женевської конвенції, таких би стабілізаційних пунктів було б набагато більше, було б багато виживших людей.
It's too cold to stand around outside. We're invited into the temporary medic headquarters for a coffee.
Coffee machine. This is a marine coffee machine. Anyone can amputate a limb in 25 minutes. You can make a cup of coffee in 30 seconds. He does everything quickly.
You can't help but notice how many cats, mostly strays, are drawn to the medical post. When I remark on this, I'm told a rather chilling tale. Abandoned pets are drawn to humans, so if Ukrainian drone pilots operating over Krinky saw strays gathered near a particular cottage, they would always check if it was being held by their comrade. If not, they would call in an artillery or kamikaze drone strike, because if not occupied by Ukrainians, the cottage must be occupied by the Russians. War is hell.
Thank you. Good spot.
We move on, through the frontline hinterland, to 2nd Battalion's underground combat headquarters. The journey is increasingly difficult and nerve-wracking, because Russian drones dominate the skies. Our military escort, Dennis, likes to listen to gothic death folk metal. This is desolate country, nerve-wracked by the threat of drones and heavy artillery. Not a place to get lost. Did I tell you I never liked gothic folk metal? This journey just confirmed it.
Those constructions works.
We reach our destination having checked with the Marines that the sky overhead is clear of Russian drones. We can't share the entrance or location, of course, though the command post never stays in one place for more than a month. Suffice to say, it's a bunker complex within a tree line on a ridge overlooking a wide valley, close to Kharkiv. We're descending into the bunker.
Which way do they go? Right, thank you.
It's a slightly claustrophobic maze of wooden walled tunnels, lined with grey sheeting.
Hi.
Our journey has been stressful. Tempers have become a little frayed.
But, yeah, Joe, hurry up, because they are trying to run the war.
У нас просто тут не... Ну, умовно, звісно. Речі можете нахуй.
But the monitors are mesmerizing. Here is the desperate battle for the Kharkiv pocket, being played out in real time, filmed by dozens of drones, and transmitted to a hole in the ground a few miles away. This is Major Anatoly, commander of 2nd Battalion, and this space is where he and his staff control their unit's sector of the front line. The Marines are in a very tough situation, hemmed in on 3 sides by an enemy that is superior in every respect except determination. On their monitors, they can watch not only footage captured by their own drones, but the footage captured by Russian UAVs. Here, as everywhere along the front line, drone warfare is crucial to the overall situation. We watch as one monitor shows an attack drone on its bombing run.
У вас кількість, скажімо так, мавіків дозволяє працювати в режимі каруселі?
Ні, зараз ні. Ми сюди, коли заходили, у нас не тільки мавіків, але й особового складу вже. Вони, навіть льотчики, також зазнають втрат. Тому, на жаль, мінус. Це твій візон?
Ні, це по нам.
По чому?
Це по нам.
Де це?
Це біля... зараз скажу.
The drone footage we've been watching is Russian, not Ukrainian.
В районі...
What is happening is not good.
Ну, загальна ситуація так складається таким чином, що за весь час, що тут несе службу батальйон, а також бригада, ворог змінив вже 3 особовий склад перед нами. Тобто вони поміняли 3 бригади, 3-4 бригади в нашій зоні відповідальності. Ворог постійно адаптується до наших дій, штурмує, проводить штурмові дії комбінованими методами і на техніці, і в пішому порядку, і з залученням мотоциклів, цивільних машин. Тобто також здійснює вплив не на одному, а на декілька напрямків одночасно. Це, звісно, нам завдає дуже великих втрат і шкоди. Але морська піхота тримається. Кожен шаг, кожне рішення командира – це можливі втрати особового складу, яких ми не можемо собі дозволити. У мене втрата одного бійця – це величезна втрата. Для них втрата 10 це ще дадуть. Тому ми трошки в нерівних умовах знаходимося з противником.
He tells me the Russians have brought in another new brigade to face his battalion. For a while the pressure will increase, until the new Russian unit begins to appreciate their low chances of survival.
Як це відбувається? Якщо бригада стоїть там тиждень, два, три, і вони створюють якийсь вплив, отримують віддачу, несуть втрати, і вже далі вони не так активно діють. А з свіжими силами дуже важко. Вони заходять, вони агресивні, вони працюють на куражі, тому зараз от нам дуже важко з ними. Вирівняти лінію фронту, вивільнити особовий склад, вийти на кордони Донецької області.
Meanwhile, the Marines must hold on, and it's become increasingly difficult to resupply frontline positions because of the drone threat. The major points to abandoned trucks that can be seen on one of the monitors.
Бачите, 2 одиниці техніки. Це наші машини. Це наші хлопці, які рухалися на евакуацію або на заняття позицій. І там ще одна. Це тільки один райончик. Ну, це так, щоб ви розуміли. Я не вважаю, чи доцільно це буде показувати, але щоб ви розуміли, наскільки важко, наскільки...
The major recalls the slaughter at Krinky when they last fought as true Marine infantry.
Тобто хлопці там
Йода на зв'язок.
Трималися тільки на силі волі. І бажання воювати.
Продивись,
Тут проще, тут цим не так складно, але кількість зосередженого ворога тут набагато більше. Засобів впливу вогневого набагато більше. У них з'явилися нічні FPV на оптоволокні, якими ми ніяк не можемо боротися. Тобто, якщо машина йде з ребом, навіть якщо з ребом, якщо FPV-шка на волокні, все, то це...
But then the conversation turns to the new weapon that we're hearing so much about.
Перший раз ми зазнали вплив на оптоволокні, ще будучи в Торецьку, коли водій приїжджає і каже, що там дорогу замінували на розтяжках. Ну, ми кажемо, це дурня, якщо будуть мінувати дорогу, то вони не будуть використовувати розтяжки. Будуть використовувати протитанкові міни або щось подібне. Він каже, ні, от на колеса намоталася ця проволока. Подивилися, вроді і проволока, не проволока. Потім почали дізнаватися, це був десь вересень місяць. Потім звернулися до 28-ї бригади. При цьому на обшивці машини застряла якраз FPV. Ми ніколи до цього не бачили. Ззаді якась колонка. І звернулися до фахівців 28-ї бригади. Вони нам сказали, що це нові дрони, які зараз використовують опоненти. Це був перший раз, коли ми. І потім вже декілька разів зустрічали, коли планували поїздки. Ми також, це цілий комплекс заходів, які виїзд машини, комплекс заходів. По-перше, ми спостерігаємо за погодою. По-друге, спостерігаємо, як діють дружні суміжні підрозділи. Якщо проходить інформація, всі з усіма намагаються ділитися. Якщо ти дієш самостійно, це смерті подібно. Тому, наприклад, якщо когось вразили, ти розумієш, що там вже діють ці засоби. Тому треба призупинити логістику. Якщо, наприклад, ти проскочив, все, десь іконки зажав, газ до поліка і ти поїхав. Тут це набагато частіше. Там були поодинокі випадки. Не так за весь час ми раз за 3-4 з цим стикалися. Але були там тільки 2 місяці. Вже коли сюди приїхали, тут набагато частіше. Тут вони коли підтягнули сюди резерви, десь місяця 2, тому 3, розгорнули їхні підрозділи, які саме спеціалізуються на цьому.
One of the Russian fiber-optic drone units goes by the name of Judgment Day.
Судний день, вони також тут діють, наскільки мені відомо, але окрім них є ще менш відомих, але не менш професійних, які виключно на техніці. Вони не працюють по піхоті, вони не працюють по укріпленню, вони працюють виключно, знищують техніку, нашу, відповідно. І вони використовують ці засоби.
The Marines are also about to adopt the Unjammable drone.
І вони тільки починають розвиватися. Скоро у нас також ми готуємо екіпажі, готуємо розрахунки, також адаптуємося, шукаємо можливості, щоб також використовувати ці засоби. Тому що, якщо рухається колона противника, артилерія, це ефективно, але ніщо не порівняється з FPV-дроном. Коли ти напряму заводиш снаряд в ціль. Єдине, що може завадити реп. При наявності оптоволокна реп безсилий. Тому ти можеш зупинити техніку ще на підході.
The importance of this new weapon was made clear in early April, when Ukrainian drones struck 700 kilometers inside Russia. Their target was the only domestic plant that makes fiber-optic cables for the kamikaze drones. It's time for us to go. First, the Marines check that the sky overhead is clear of Russian drones.
Are we okay to go?
But nowhere is safe. Driving away from the Kharkova pocket, we pass the wreckage of another drone victim. And with the arrival of fiber-optic FPVs, that threat will only increase.